Hi, it's Jason. Today I'm going to read Chapter 10 from Floki's Army. Chapter 10. Just one look is all it took. Jason had some spare time and decided to look online to see if there were any Shih Tzus available in Illinois. Maybe if he found a couple for Royo to show to his mother, she may decide the young man could have a dog. When looking for a specific breed, you can just Google the name of the breed and the word rescue. All the rescues in the vicinity are able to list their available dogs on petfinder.com. Jason started his search. There were quite a few Shih Tzus available. Some looked like they had just been to the groomers. They were cut and brushed and even had bows on their heads. These dogs would find homes within a week. Other Shih Tzus shown were still cute, but many needed a trim. Still, it wouldn't take long for them to find a home. Since he loved the breed, Jason didn't mind looking at each and every Shih Tzu until he came upon this one. His jaw dropped when he saw this picture. He had a healthy Shih Tzu, and he knew what they should look like. This dog did not look like that at all. He couldn't take his eyes off the picture. He had never seen anything like it. Then he read the description in a short story of the dog. The description just made it even worse. All Jason could think was that he had to get a picture to Paula. He took a picture of the posting and texted it to Paula, who was already at work. He just added the question, "What do you think?" Typically, she didn't have time to look at her phone until the end of the evening, which was quite often 2 a.m. But for some reason, she looked at her phone before the restaurant got busy, and she simply replied, "We have to help him." Now Jason kicked it into gear. He started making a plan to help bring this boy to a healthier state, much like he did for clients, but with much more conviction. This seemed to him to be a life-or-death situation. Jason had already decided that no one else was better suited to help this poor dog than he, Paula, and Hannah. He had to consider Hannah, though. She had been with them over 8 years and was spoiled by the attention that she received every day. She had shown in the past to be very gentle with older dogs, including one blind dog in the neighborhood. If she found a sick mouse or a baby bird falling from a tree, she would just stay with it until Jason picked her up and carried her home. Jason was sure that her nurturing nature would kick in with this sickly old guy. The next thought was to see what natural supplements were available to help a dog in this condition. They already had companies that they relied on for quality products, so he started there. He was sure that he could bring about positive changes for this little guy with good nutrition and measured exercise. Okay, now he had a plan just in case a shelter wanted to know if he could care for this dog. Now he needed to make the call. The shelter that had this little guy was called 4 Paws for You Forever. Jason called them, and surprisingly they picked up. The woman introduced herself as Sherry Casey and asked what she could do for him. Jason said he was calling about the Shih Tzu that was 10 years old and had a rough life. He said, "I'm sure that no one is calling about him." Sherry responded, "Believe it or not, someone is coming to see him tomorrow." Jason felt mixed emotions. Fortunately, someone was interested in the dog, but he still felt that he and Paula were the only ones that could fully help this guy. Jason said, "Oh, I'm glad to hear that, but maybe you could take my phone number just in case." "Sure," said Sherry. "You never know with people." The next afternoon, Jason received a call from Sherry Casey. She said a man and a woman came to see the dog, currently referred to as Colonel, and said he was too ugly. "What, Jason?" asked Jason. "Yeah," said Sherry, "that's exactly what they said. But luckily I didn't say anything because they did take another dog home." "Why don't you fill out an application, and I'll get back to you after I look it over. If everything checks out, you can come and meet him this Saturday at PetSmart in Downers Grove." "Okay," said Jason. He had no doubt that their application would be accepted. It was Thursday, and Jason wouldn't see Paula until the following day, when he came home from work and she was getting ready to go back to work. He told her that the dog could be seen this Saturday. "Maybe we could go early so you can make it to work on time." "You know," she said, "I looked at my schedule last night, and for some reason, I'm scheduled off this Saturday. I haven't had a weekend night off in over a year." "Great," said Jason. "That way you can sleep a little, and we'll load up Hannah and go meet this boy." Saturday finally came. Paula was a little tired from working the night before, but the excitement erased any fatigue. The timing of her day off was perfect. This needed to be a family event and a family decision. All members were equal, but they really needed Hannah to be happy about this change. They also wanted her to look good so that they appeared to be the best dog owners ever. They were in a hurry to get started, but Paula took the extra time to brush Hannah and put a bow in her hair. They would grow her out every year from April, and she almost had a full coat now. They were certain she would make a good impression. The drive to Downers Grove took about an hour. PetSmart was located in a big strip mall, the kind that made Downers Grove look like every other suburb in the country. Before they knew it, they were there, walking through the front doors of PetSmart and looking all around. They asked one of the cashiers, and she directed them to the middle of the store. They saw that 4 Paws For You had a fenced-in area about 10 feet by 15 feet available for dogs that were to be shown that day. Jason and Paula looked all over the dogs, but didn't see the one that looked like the boy they had come to see. That is when they noticed one of the volunteers sitting with a tiny little dog in her arms. To see this poor boy was overwhelming. It was horrible and wonderful at the same time. He was so frail, yet he clearly was enjoying being held. Jason, Paula, and Hannah walked over to the volunteer and said, "We're here to see him." Just then, Sherry Casey came over and introduced herself. "Hi, we're kind of busy right now. Let me find my husband John, and he'll take you in the back so you can have a private meeting." "Oh, good. You brought your dog." It only took a few minutes for John to arrive. They had their eyes fixed on this little guy the whole time. John carried the little guy and brought them to a large empty room in the back of the store. There he put the little guy on the floor. He could stand, but he wobbled a little bit. Hannah was curious, but cautious. Unfortunately, the place had a smell of industrial cleaners. Hannah would always get very anxious when exposed to the smell after a few minutes. Jason and Paula theorized that it must have reminded her of the shelter. They really didn't get a good feel for whether the two dogs liked each other or not, because Hannah was now panting anxiously, and the little guy just didn't seem to know what to do. He was, however, able to walk a little after a while. There were signs of hope. There was no conversation. They couldn't possibly walk away from this little guy. Jason ran to the cash station, and Paula stayed at the store and bought him a couple light sweaters and a collar. He was so scrawny and bony. It was April 7th, and he was going to need something to keep him warm. None of Hannah's sweaters would fit him. Plus, from now on, he was going to have things of his own. They already had everything else they needed, at least they thought so. When Jason returned, they paid for the little guy, and the 4 of them went to the car and drove home together. Coming home was comforting for Jason and Paula. Jason and Paula knew that no matter what happened to this little boy, he was safe now. They knew what to do, and then again, they didn't. Hannah was always very healthy. A big part of that was due to the care she received. This little boy was not healthy. There was little information on how to care for a dog like this. The first thing they did was feed him. It had taken a while for Hannah to adjust to her raw diet. It took this little guy 2 minutes. He had been fed at the rescue, but he had only been there for a week. He was still starving. They remembered that when meeting him, John Casey told them that he weighed 5.7 pounds and had already gained a half a pound. The breed standard was from 9 pounds to 16 pounds. He was way underweight. They also remembered the term puppy mill coming up. No one could be certain, but that was the only logical explanation for how this little boy ended up in this condition. He was still intact anatomically, which also led to the same conclusion. He was most likely used for breeding until he couldn't breed anymore. Even knowing all that, they couldn't feel sorry for him, at least not openly. They needed to focus on getting him healthy. Pity was not going to help their boy. Their boy. He needed a name. Colonel was not going to cut it, because he didn't know it to be his name anyway. He wouldn't even know the dogs had names. Jason and Paula were avid fans of a TV show called Vikings. One of their favorite characters was a skinny, scruffy, and had battle scars. But he was also very lovable. The character's name was Floki. Out of the blue, Paula said, "We should call him Floki." No discussion was necessary. Physically, their descriptions matched, and there was no doubt that their boy was a warrior. Now he had a home and a name. When wrapped up in the emotion of something like this, it wasn't possible to prepare for everything. Bringing him home was the most important thing. His little bio, put out by the shelter, said that he couldn't see well. After testing him as many ways as they could possibly think of, they determined he was completely blind. Jason would stand in a completely dark room and then turn on a bright light. There was no reaction at all. You could wave your hand an inch from his eyes, and he didn't even notice. They needed to have accurate information about Floki so that they were able to keep him safe. It was easy to conclude that he was not housebroken, since he had never seen a house before. How do you house train an old blind dog? Where is he going to sleep? What would they do if they were both out of the house, even for a short while? The questions were adding up. Of course they knew what they were getting into, but you can't come up with all the solutions until you're living the reality. Here we go. End of chapter 10. Thank you.